people from the United Kingdom, from Colombia, from the United States, from Russia, Egypt, France, Turkey, Brazil, Cameroon, Switzerland, Denmark. So we have a quite interesting gathering of people around here, happily interested in topics of measurement and quantification, which is not an easy thing to find on a December. But again, congratulations to all of you for participating here. Thank you again. Welcome to our first meeting of the community of practice around measurement and quantification of South-South cooperation, which we are developing here at APC Colombia. I will, please give me a second so that I can share something. Can you confirm that you are seeing this?
Yes, Luis.
Great, thanks, Catalina. So our agenda for the session, this session will last around 80 to 90 minutes. We will have a couple of opening remarks from distinguished participants here at the meeting. After that, we will go to a presentation by four panelists that are already connected here, and we will do a Q&A session and a bit of an ideation session to take the temperature of some of the ideas that we have here at the community. So to start, please let me give the floor to Mr. Thomas Gass, who is co-chair of the Global Partnership for Effective Development Cooperation and ambassador from Switzerland. So, Mr. Gass, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zambrano. Distinguida directora, estimados señores y señoras, buenos días. Es un placer para mí poder saludarles a la ocasión de este importante diálogo de acción, el tercero ya en la región latinoamericana después de Honduras y la República Dominicana. Son momentos claves dentro del cuadro de trabajo de la Alianza Mundial,
para ver varias caritas, ¿no?
En cuanto a la cooperación sur, los principios de eficacia. Permítanme, por favor, seguir en inglés.
Yes, Mr. Thomas, go ahead.
Since 2011, Busan and the creation of the Global Partnership on Effective Development Cooperation, Colombia has been a crucial partner in promoting systematically the effectiveness principles, being in sub-regional, regional or global fora. Colombia is a very valuable member of the Global Partnership, and we really thank you for your constant engagement in building forward better. In particular, in the name of the co-chairs of the partnership, we would like to thank Colombia's leadership to address how the principles of effective development cooperation could be applied and monitored in the context of the South-South cooperation. We are very much aware that this reflection needs time and must be based on the practical experiences and the commitments of South-South cooperation. Colombia has spearheaded this important process to bring together providers of South-South cooperation and explore with you, the practical implications of effectiveness for your cooperation and your contexts. It's particularly appreciated that you're working with the Secretaría General Iberoamericana and the Programa Iberoamericano para el Fortalecimiento de la Cooperación Sur-Sur, and that promotion of data and statistics for development are central to the reflections for you. It's an important priority to the Global Partnership on Effective Development Cooperation to promote the effective support of statistical capacity and data. Statistical systems and good and accessible data are fundamental for the implementation of all four effectiveness principles. Data is needed to monitor and show country-level results. Statistical systems are a key country system which we all should use and align to. Data is the basis for a framework of mutual accountability amongst all partners. And finally, accessible and good data are also needed to enable all actors, also non-state actors, to hold their government accountable, and hence are a basis for inclusive development processes. We look forward to advance the issue of data with Colombia, and we welcome Colombia's important role to host the UN World Data Forum in 2023. Last but not least, please join us, Switzerland, from the 12th to the 14th December 2022, so next in a year's time. We will be hosting a high-level meeting on effectiveness in Geneva in hybrid format. In order to be able to mobilize at the highest level and formulate some strong political messages, we remind the world that the principles on development effectiveness are important and relevant. We would like you to join Colombia and us throughout the year in the road towards that summit. We are eager to hear more about your experiences and how you and your partners are living and experiencing the effectiveness principles to build back better. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas Gass, for these words of recognition and this invitation that you do or that you propose to us to work on generating information and generating data for practical applications of the effectiveness principles. Thank you again for your participation, and I will give the floor now to our Director General of APC Colombia, Ms. Viviana Manrique. Please, Ms. Viviana, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Good day for everyone around the world, and welcome to this first meeting of our community of practice on measurement and quantification of South-South cooperation. I'm pleased to see that this topic has gathered the interest of partners from around the world. I want to send a special greet to Mr. Thomas Gass, co-chair from the Global Partnership for Effective Development Cooperation, to Mr. Paulo Stevens, director of the BRICS Policy Center, to Mr. Emmanuel Latous, director and co-founder of the DataTalk Alliance, and John Hardy Garcia, competitiveness of Palmyra's Chambers of Commerce. This event is also part of the action dialogues of the Global Partnership for Effective Development Cooperation, GPDC, a series of multi-stakeholder events promoted by the GPDC to explore how to develop more effective ways of working among sectors to achieve the 2030 agenda. Since some of you might not be familiar with our work, let me take a few seconds to highlight that the Presidential Agency for International Cooperation, APC Colombia, is the public institution in charge of managing and coordinating financial and technical non-reimbursable international cooperation that Colombia receives and provides. As a middle-income country that receives official development assistance and provides South-South cooperation, now more than ever, Colombia needs to be more effective in its cooperation, aiming to strengthen capacities in national and local institutions to attract new sources of cooperation such as private donors, to lead by example in the Global South, promoting more horizontal alliances and exchanging knowledge with all actors. Our thoughts about effectiveness have been informed by the work we are doing at the GPDC, where we are leading an action area dedicated to exploring how the effectiveness principles apply to South-South cooperation. In this group, we are joined with a group of countries that includes Bangladesh, Cape Verde, El Salvador, Indonesia, Kenya, Mexico, and Rwanda. This community of practice on measurement and quantification of South-South cooperation is also the first outward-facing activity of our Knowledge Management Hub of South-South cooperation. Knowledge Hub is our strategy, but for strengthening capacities with our partners by making available public policies, best practices that are adaptable to other contexts through the virtual campus, a collaborative space and communities of practice such as this one. With this space, we invite you to reflect about your perspective regarding the importance of metrics for improving performance. Our aspiration is that this community can build concepts and tools to expand the frontier of knowledge about technical cooperation. Catalina Quintero, Director of Offer and South-South Cooperation at APC Colombia, will speak in more detail about our recent experience and how it formed the insight for this community of practice. From my part, I want to thank the BRICS Policy Center, the Data Pop Alliance, the GPDC, and the Palmyra Chamber of Commerce for their bravery in presenting their ideas as a discussion start. And I want to wish you all a very productive session today and in the coming weeks and months. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Manrique, for your kind words and your good wishes for the work of this working group. We will move ahead now to the second part of our agenda, which is the panelist presentation or a conversation with our panelists. We are joined by 4 distinguished people with a lot of knowledge and practice around measurement of international cooperation. We have Ms. Catalina Quintero, which is Director of South-South Cooperation at APC Colombia, Mr. John Hardy, which is the Director of Competitiveness at the Palmyra Chamber of Commerce here in Colombia, Mr. Paulo Esteves, who is the former Director of the BRICS Policy Center, and Mr. Emmanuel Letousse, who is Director and co-founder of the Data Pop Alliance. So I will now give the floor to Ms. Catalina Quintero from APC Colombia. She will share a short presentation about the work that we have done. Please, I seem to have confused something here. Please give me a couple of seconds. Meanwhile, Catalina, if you want to introduce yourself while I look for the presentation.
Okay, thanks, Luis. So hello, everyone. For us, it's great to be able to share some of our ideas with you today and to be launching our Knowledge Hub that we are expecting to launch some time ago. So we are very happy to see you from all around the world here today. So as some of you may know, my name is Catalina Quintero, and I'm Director of South-South Cooperation at APC Colombia. Our South-South Cooperation team handles all bilateral and regional projects with countries of the Global South in Africa, Asia, Eurasia, Latin America, and the Caribbean. During 2021, we have developed around 200 activities within 82 projects and 38 specific actions in South-South and Triangular Cooperation, with over 40 Global South countries. To finance these agendas, we manage a Cooperation and International Assistance Fund named FOCAI, acronym in Spanish, which is comprised of public resources from the national budget that are renewed yearly and amount to around $4 million each year. As a middle-income country, Colombia is facing a decrease in official development assistance, ODA flows, despite the fact that we continue to face strong economic, social, political, and environmental challenges. We are also finding increased interest among many of our peers for replicating experiences developed in Colombia, which put us in a dual role, that of being recipients of ODA and providers of South-South cooperation. So this dual role allows us to participate in different cooperation mechanisms, but also impose us on a dual load of reporting according to different approaches to measurements, since ODA and South-South cooperation measures different things. We believe the effectiveness agenda provides a common qualitative framework between ODA and South-South cooperation that can be exploited to improve the efficiency of reporting mechanisms and to provide valuable insights to participants of both spaces. During the past few years, APC Colombia has been participating in 2 spaces that highlight this difference. First, as Mr. Thomas Gas mentioned in the words, we are part of the General Secretariat for Iberoamerica, CEGIP, which has a mechanism for monitoring the South-South cooperation that each country participates in, whether as provider or beneficiary, focusing on qualitative information such as the number of projects developed, the countries involved, and their role, the topics covered by their project, and some measures of each project's budget. Another space that we have been participating is the Total Official Support for Sustainable Development, TOSDI, which is a new standard designed to monitor all official resources in support of the 2030 Agenda, including official development assistance, private resources mobilized through official channels, contribution to international public goods, and South-South cooperation. Traditional international cooperation monitoring efforts focus on official development assistance, usually under SDG indicator 70.3. Yet, these indicators, with its focus on financial flows, do not correctly reflect the dynamics of South-South cooperation. For APC Colombia, our South-South cooperation works matters because we dedicate important financial and human resources to organizing the knowledge exchanges that comprise the bulk of our work. In monetary terms, I mentioned earlier our Cooperation and International Assistance Fund, FOCAI, which is used exclusively to finance South-South cooperation projects and provide humanitarian aid. In 2019, FOCAI represents over 54 of APC Colombia's entire operating budget. These resources, around 4 million USD, were invested in support 110 South-South cooperation projects with partners around the world. In human talent terms, the agency dedicates around 2/3 of its staff to South-South cooperation. We believe that global efforts to monitor international cooperation are valuable, but they need to take into account South-South cooperation to have a comprehensive picture of the amount of work taking place around the world, and not only around the traditional agencies. As such, in the spirit of inclusive partnerships, Southern countries should be recognized as legitimate contributors to international development with their own voices and visions, if we are to promote truly global partnerships. Here, the GPDC provides us an interesting perspective for measuring the quality of the cooperation work. From an ODA perspective, it doesn't ask the question of how much are you spending on cooperation, but of how effective is your spend, meaning, are you promoting national development frameworks? Are you focusing on results? Are you being transparent and accountable? And are you promoting multi-stakeholder participation and contribution? The GPDC focused on these dimensions. It's a very good entry point for showcasing South-South cooperation work, as the effectiveness principles are very similar to the principles of South-South cooperation. Some countries have a hard line around the principles of South-South cooperation and may be wary of his approach that tries to connect with other Northern agendas, and that's understandable. But APC Colombia, we are willing to experiment with different partners and different views to see if the debate can move forward the current minimum common denominator status. In the Global South, simply counting how much each country spends of South-South cooperation and comparing those numbers is a very complicated task because there is no consensus on exactly what to count as South-South cooperation. Unlike ODA, which has its definitions and monitoring mechanisms clearly defined by the OECD Development Assistance Committee. South-South cooperation has no central organization. In Latin America, the General Secretariat for Iberoamerica fostered debates around the topic for years, and the minimum consensus reached was to focus on the dimensions I mentioned before: partners, roles, topics, general budget. Yet, there are other kinds of activities such as peacekeeping missions, loans, infrastructure projects, and contribution to multilateral organizations that only some countries count as South-South cooperation, and thus were not included in the consensus. So, in absence of a regional consensus, countries have taken to experiment local ways of measuring South-South cooperation at a finer level. In the case of APC Colombia, our strategic bet for measuring the added value of South-South cooperation has been our South-South Cooperation Toolkit, which we started developing around 2016 and which was mainstream in our workflows in 2018. The toolkit examples of 13 different modalities of activities for promoting technical cooperation, from high-level meetings to community workshops. It has a project form that measures all the usual dimensions of cooperation, such as partners, roles, topics, SDG, budgets, and activities. In addition to this, the toolkit includes a quantification and value aggregation model, which attempts to quantify added value in 5 new dimensions. These are knowledge generated, professional networks developed, visibility of the project, special attention paid to vulnerable groups, and alignment to the SDGs. Implementing the toolkit was hard, since it represents a new way of approaching how our projects work. But over time, our partners, both national and international, have appreciated the insights provided by these dimensions of analysis. And we have even seen it replicated by other countries in their own instruments. But we think there is still room for improvement, and we need new ideas to move the conversation forward. So our big idea here, and we want to share with you, is this multi-stakeholder, multi-spheric community of practice on measurement and quantification of South-South cooperation. The community will be comprised of public, private, social, and academic parties from both hemispheres of the world, with the objectives of exchanging knowledge about metrics for technical cooperation. We know there is a lot of literature about this. We know that SEHIP has produced documents systematizing how Ibero-American countries work. And we are also aware of more recent publications from colleagues from Brazil, Costa Rica, and Mexico. We also know that the Research and Information System for Development Countries has published many works about the topic for African and Asian countries. We know that the GPDC and the UN Office for South-South Cooperation are developing publication regarding these topics. And of course, multilateral development banks produce a lot of literature regarding technical exchanges and knowledge management. A tangible product of this community of practice can be a document providing results-oriented, practical examples of how technical cooperation is measured around the world. In this idea, we were inspired mainly by two initiatives: the Community of Practice on Poverty and Inequality of the OECD, and of course, the work that we are carrying out at the GPDC Action Area 2.3 on the effectiveness of South-South cooperation, where we are seeing firsthand how valuable it is to have different perspectives around an issue. We are committed to promoting and expanding this community of practice throughout 2022. As a result of this community of practice and the exercise after this panel is geared towards agreeing on some next steps. Thank you very much, and I wish we have a fruitful conversation based on these ideas. Thanks.
Thank you, Catalina. Again, Catalina Quintero, Director of South-South Cooperation at APC Colombia. She has just mentioned the last few years of experiences that we have here at APC Colombia, managing these issues of measuring and quantification of South-South cooperation. After Ms. Catalina Quintero, I will give the floor to Mr. John Hardy from the Chamber of Commerce of Palmira, who will speak about the experience that they have at the Chamber of Commerce around issues of quantification and sharing knowledge and being more effective in the way that they structure their knowledge exchanges. So, Mr. Hardy, please go ahead.
Can you see my presentation, Luis?
Not yet.
Okay, let me see. Mm-hmm. Right now?
We can see it now. Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Okay, Luis, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. And thank you very much for this invitation. For us, it's a pleasure to share with you our case and at the Palmira Chamber of Commerce. So my idea today is to share with you our case. Our case is going around international cooperation with the APC Colombia. So, but before talking about our experience, I will share with you our area. The Palmira Chamber of Commerce is located in the west of Colombia, a region, Valle del Cauca. Especially we have four cities: Palmira, Candelaria, Florida, and Pradera. This is a region at the Chamber of Commerce, and we have here an entrepreneurship network in this region. The Chamber of Commerce has the responsibility of to coordinate this entrepreneurship network. So for this reason, when we see our area, we can say our business composition, where we have more than 11,000 companies in this area. We have two free zones and international airport that facilitate the international trade. Talking about our sector, the composition, business composition by sector, the main one is trade, followed by the manufacturing sector. However, in our ecosystem entrepreneur sheet, we didn't have questions without answers. Can you see in this moment? You can see our ecosystem. The ecosystem is composed by the public sector. Excuse me, by the public sector, by the education sector, by private sector, where the Chamber of Commerce coordinates the entrepreneurship network. We have the financial sector and other institutions like the private sector. However, this ecosystem has had a long time ago a challenge. The challenge is to improve the life quality in this area. However, we had these questions without answers. For example, how many entrepreneurs are there in this region? What stage are they in? What are they? What are your needs? For example, how many jobs have they generated? How much have they sold over time? What support have they received from the ecosystem? We didn't know about this we didn't have in that time this answer for this question. However, we received support from the APC Colombia. In this case, we received a program, and this program is called MISE. And this program help us to create like a road for attending our entrepreneurs. So at the beginning, for example, we apply a test on an entrepreneur. This entrepreneur receives a program, and day after day or time after time, we suppose that this entrepreneur is going to close the gaps that we find in the beginning of the test. After finishing the program, we evaluate again the entrepreneurship, applying once again one test. So this test is going to tell us how much or how many they have closed the gaps. So we have this program because we received, as I told you, an international cooperation from APC Colombia. So this program has information, training, advisory, consultancy, and contacts for our entrepreneurs. Today, we are we are working together, all these institutions, in order to have an incubator model. This incubator model is coordinated with the MISE program. According to the stage of the entrepreneur, we have entrepreneur an idea stage, or could be pre-incubation, incubation, or post-incubation. How we know this? Well, how we know if this entrepreneur needs to be in pre-incubation or incubation? We know that after applying the test. So for this reason, we have today a new result. And for example, in this picture, you can see our entrepreneurs and all institutions after finishing the program. For us, we feel in this moment very happy because we have finished our program, and this program we found that finally we close the gaps in these entrepreneurs. Besides, we consider that it was very important to share a vision. Everybody must be the same vision, because if we don't have the same vision, the same mission, well, at the end it's going to be difficult to have the results that we want. For the reason, we work in a strategic business plan. The Palmira Chamber of Commerce Entrepreneur Network designed a strategic business plan, and now um, we have creating this strategic business plan, and we create a solid and overall strategic business plan between 21 and 25. So the idea is to incubate all the entrepreneurs, the most of them. We have a clear vision, we have a mission and objectives. So this is going to be easy for us to measure our effort, our work, in order to improve the life quality in this area. Besides, our idea is to create an operational plan for facilities, services, trainers, coaches, recruitment to provide optimal support to the startups. Besides, create a financial plan for investment, exploitation, and startup losses during the first years and years after year. Well, and according to the results, we have today the mission, we have vision, and I will show you this in this slide. For example, our vision. Our vision is to increasingly help and assist startups in making their business come true. We'll train, coach, and support in due time at least 16 startups annually. The minimal success rate will be 60%. In that respect, will result in at least an estimated 90.6 jobs annually. So as you can see here, our idea is to have some goals. So this is going to give us an idea for design indicators in order to measure at the end if we are working in the best way. Besides, to manage this ambition, investment will be made by finance, time, energy, and education and training our internal staff in order to maintain the constant high level. For example, we are training our mentors, we are training our people in order to improve the skills. Well, at the end of my presentation, because my presentation is so short, is to share with you our case. Our case is focused and to create better conditions in a region. If we create better condition in a region, on this condition, we are sure that we are going to improve life quality. For this reason, we have some key performance indicators in short time, in middle term, and long term. Why? Because our idea is, as I said, is create better condition and life quality. So right now we have, for example, indicators for measuring sales, indicator for measuring jobs, indicator for measuring how many startups or entrepreneurs we have in the area. And we are working now in to create or to create or to design an agenda, a competitive agenda, in order to evaluate a different impact on the region. So this is the case that I want to share with you, our case, where how we have improved our region after receiving international cooperation. In this case, we receive an international cooperation from APC Colombia. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. John Hardy from the Chamber of Commerce of Palmira for this interesting presentation about how Chamber of Commerce, who has a mission of improving the performance of entrepreneurs around a region, deals with this problem or this challenge of developing indicators to measure progress, for example, and to provide more effective service for their clients. I see here also that Falguni has presented a series of important heavy-hitting questions that go at the core of the difference between official development assistance and South-South cooperation. They are very interesting questions that we are going to take advantage of to organize some debates around our community of debates. And taking that exercise into account, I invite you to present any questions that you might have for the panelists via the chat box. And after we have the participations, we can do a quick Q&A session with Mr. Letousse, Mr. Hardy, and Mrs. Quintero, and Mr. Esteves, so they can answer your questions. After this, we give the floor to Mr. Paulo Esteves from Brazil. I think he's speaking to us right now. Paulo, if you can hear us, the floor is yours.
Luis, sorry, I was looking after the button here. Sorry about that. I have a very small presentation. I want to raise 2 points only, 2 short points on TOSD. Apparently, TOSD became the main way to measure development flows for the implementation of the 2030 Agenda and the SDGs. There are still many questions about how TOSD, how countries must report their official support for sustainable development, particularly in what the TOSD calls the second pillar. So my points are related to TOSD in two ways. The first one is the TOSD, the definition of TOSD eligible countries. The second point is the relationship between South-South cooperation and global public goods, and how could we start a debate on the relationship between South-South cooperation, on how South-South cooperation and triangular cooperation could contribute for for the provision of public goods, of global public goods. So the first question is about TOSD eligible countries. The very definition of TOSD, the instrument has a list of recipient countries, which, surprise, surprise, is the same list as the DAC. So TOSD transports from the DAC to a broader environment the very concept of recipient countries that comes from an old definition of the DAC based on income per capita. As you know, many Latin American and Caribbean countries are fighting against this this narrow definition of ODA, and also fighting against the narrow definition of TOSD eligible countries in a second possibility of being considered a TOSD eligible country, which is the opt-in procedure. There is this opt-in procedure which is not yet completely clear on how countries could or should opt in, and what would be the criteria for allowing these countries to opt in. It seems to me that Latin American and Caribbean countries have a very consistent, deep, and strong debate around the problem of graduation from one side, and the development gaps of recently graduated countries as Uruguay or Chile. I'm not sure if Chile already graduated, but it's on the way. This debate is systematized in what these countries call development in transition, which brings to the fore many development gaps that middle-income countries or upper middle-income countries face when they are graduating. So my proposal here, I don't have a proposal to regulate or to define the opt-in mechanism, but my proposal is, and this is a provocation for Luis, because the question of this particular roundtable is, what does it mean to promote a more effective South-South cooperation for different kinds of actors within the context of development transition? But the main way of monitoring the contribution for the implementation of the SDGs does not take the development in transition concept into account. And this is something that I think we should open. That this is a debate that we should open, and we should come with an actual proposal for regulating this opt-in procedure in a way that covers the multidimensionality of the development in transition concept. So this is my first point. My second point is there is a debate. There is a debate on the relationship between development cooperation and global public goods in general. This debate appears in a very, let's say, in a very important way on the relationship between ODA and climate finance. As you know, the definition of ODA states that ODA must have the economic development and the welfare of developing countries as its main objective, which means there is a development test to be considered, to qualify as ODA. On the other side, the climate finance or some project to be considered as a climate mitigation project has to count 100% on climate, and there are specific markers to define what should be considered as a component of a project on climate change or on mitigation. And there's this debate about mitigation is interesting because many developed countries are arguing that the investment in in mitigation activities or in mitigation projects would have a global effect. So if there is a global effect, it should be counted as TOS-D at least, but there are some countries that are actually pushing the idea of counting this as ODA. This is the same debate that we face, that we as developing countries, that we saw as spectators about ODA, the relationship between ODA and refugees, and the use of ODA in country to help refugees. So the same debate is taking place now about on mitigation activities, and it is taking place both at the DAC on the ODA specific concept, and at the same time in the TOS-D at the Pillar 2. If you look at the Pillar 2, you're going to find that the TOS-D would qualify certain projects that which expenditure is in country, because they mitigate the effects of they mitigate the climate change. So the expenditure, the in-country expenditure is at least conceptually assured or open. The possibility is open by the TOS-D. The thing that I think we should, as South-South cooperation practitioners and experts, the thing that I think we should discuss now is whether or not, and let be clear about that. This is a discussion in the DAC. South-South cooperation partners will not take part in this discussion, but let's be clear. We are the recipient countries, and what's happening now, many authors are arguing, is that there is a diversion of ODA to climate activities instead of pro-poor activities, and this is something that we have to address as recipient countries. So there is a debate about ODA and TOS-D, which is not the subject of this roundtable. Sorry about that, but I think we should look at it as recipient countries. And in the other side, there is a debate, there should be a debate, there is no debate about the relationship between South-South cooperation and global public goods. So a mitigation project, a Brazilian mitigation project in the Amazon region should be considered, with the expenditure in country, should be considered South-South cooperation, or a South-South cooperation contribution for the provision of global public goods. I'm not arguing in favor of that, but I think it is time to start discussing how South-South cooperation could contribute for the provision of global public goods, and what kind of activities would be acknowledged as South-South cooperation. Is there any expenditure, in-country expenditure, that could be considered as a contribution for global public goods? And in that case, development cooperation. So I'm just opening these two questions. The first one around the TOSD initiative. The first one is the definition of the opt-in procedure in the debate about eligible countries, and the second one is how we should deal with the relationship between South-South cooperation and global public goods. Last but not least, I asked Luis to make this advertisement here. We are part of a network called Nest Latam, the network of Southern think tanks in Latin America, and we are conducting now a research funded by the UNDP and the UNOSC on the relationship between South-South and Triangular Cooperation and global and regional public goods. And we are conducting a survey in Latin America, only for Latin American practitioners, on how they see the relationship of South-South between South-South cooperation and global and regional public goods in general, or in specific sectors like climate, health, food security, and social protection. I'm gonna put in the chat the link of the survey, and I would appreciate if you could answer the survey. It's only 15 or as the Survey Monkey says, 30 minutes. Thank you, Luis.
Thank you, Paulo, sorry. And thank you for these ideas that you are putting on the table. We intended to start a discussion around some ideas, and Paulo just accepted our invitation to be provocative and put on the floor or on the table two important ideas here about maybe a proposal for regulating the opt-in procedure that covers the multidimensionality of development in transition context within the context of TOSD, and also this idea or provocation that we need to take into account other kinds of expenditures, even those that occur within country, and not to, for example, finance movement of people or movement of technical exchanges as a contribution of South-South cooperation. This is something that we know from our point of view at APC Colombia, that it has been discussed, for example, in the Ibero-American General Secretariat. A consensus has not been achieved around how to account for these kinds of expenses, but the opportunity is there to reopen this debate. So I thank Paulo again for this. And I invite Mr. Emmanuel Letouset to illuminate us on the ideas of the Data Pop Alliance and how, from his perspective, he sees this debate around measurement and effectiveness. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much. So can you hear me okay? Just checking. All right.
Yes, great.
Well, so thank you. So thank you very much for the invitation, the opportunity. So my name is Emmanuel Letouset. I'm the director of Data Pop Alliance, which is a global nonprofit organization that works at the intersection of data and development. So previously, I started my career about 20 years ago working for the French government in Vietnam as a technical assistant, and then I worked at the UN, UNDP New York, and I see some few familiar faces on my screen. And so, as I mentioned, over the past 8 years, I've been creating Data Pop Alliance, working in Latin America, in Sub-Saharan Africa, in the MENA region. So all of this to say that I think over the past 20 years, I've seen different parts of the debate and some changes in these discussions. So in particular, I mean, we've seen, of course, the kind of the rise of the global South. Criticisms against the old way that development assistance had been implemented over the since the decolonization and the turn of the century. It's also been the years of the data revolution and the digital revolution, and expectations that we could measure things better and learn from measurement. So there is a natural logical impulse to want to measure better, quantify, etc., which is mostly good, but sometimes can also lead to maybe jumping too quickly to wanting to measure things. So I'll come back to that. And we've seen, of course, the emergence of global risks. So, of course, COVID, but of course, climate change, things like refugee crisis, and so on and so forth. And so, maybe a message. So, based on my experience of these past 20 years, is that so the discussion today is about how to quantify and measure South-South cooperation. And so, a point that I would like to make is that I would emphasize overall the importance of meaning over measurement. So what I mean by that is three things. First, there is a lot of discussion about what is meant by about meaning. So what is meant by South-South cooperation? We know that the very definition of South is fluid. It will change, over time. There are countries that are sort of like, at the border, which have been, mentioned several times. The global South will soon become almost the entire world. If you look at, population growth, by, in 50 years, how much of the world will not be South will be a very small fraction. Then there's also the fact that the South, of course, is not homogeneous. So there are, large differences. It's also the fact that it's not that South-South cooperation is not good in and by itself. If you have an autocratic country supporting an autocratic country, and you measure the flows, is it good? Do you put that in the plus column, saying South-South cooperation has increased, the same way that not all of GDP growth is good. So I think we have to go to go a bit below just or think in a bit more like complex terms about what is meant by South-South cooperation, especially in the future. The second way I think that that meaning matters is what is meant. What do we mean to achieve? So what do we mean to achieve through South-South cooperation? And so there, I think that also based on my experience, a lot of countries of the global South face roughly similar problems that are very hard challenges. There's the question, and some of northern countries also do share those challenges, but there are things like so vast inequality, extreme poverty, corruption, elite capture, gender-based violence, crackdowns on journalism and journalists. And so those are, and so on and so forth. And those are very political, very deeply ingrained, social phenomena. And so I think the ambition of South-South cooperation should be not just to do, to exchange between southern countries, but to crack those very hard nuts. And that's very political, and it will be uncomfortable to a lot of governments in the South, because a lot of governments in the South are not are far from being democratic countries, and so some of those regimes will hopefully lose out as we kind of work towards trying to achieve these goals towards human development, democracy, participation, and so on. And thirdly, so let's say once we have established what do we mean to achieve through South-South cooperation, then there's a question, of course, what are the means? So through which means do we achieve that? And there I would just make a couple observations about some features or principles of cooperation that I think work best, or again from my experience. One is to be very concrete. So to work on concrete problems, to work on projects. So it can be between two countries or different stakeholders from a country, but to really be very, very concrete, to develop a cooperation program between universities, to develop an exchange between different companies, but so to really work on concrete problems through very concrete means. The second is I really, and it's been mentioned a few times, I really believe in the value and the strength of partnerships and networks. And so there is a kind of a phrase or a concept, which is, of course, PPP. Everybody knows PPP, public-private partnership, but I think now there's also this other concept, which is PPPP, which is public-private people partnership. And the people refers to civil society. And so I believe in projects that bring together all these different parts of societies, not just the public and the private, but also civil society, academia, and so on and so forth. And under this umbrella of PPPPs, I often stress the value of working through networks. So there are lots of networks. I mentioned academia. There are networks of civil society organizations. Some think tanks are networks in and by themselves. And I really believe, I think the value of these networks is typically very strong. Third feature, I also quite believe in regional initiatives. I think I very much welcome collaborations between, for instance, countries or civil society organizations or governments of, let's say, LATAM and Sub-Saharan Africa. But I've also found that that projects, networks that are regional in nature can be very transformative, can be very powerful, and that then these networks can link up with other networks from other regions. But that the fact that a lot of regions share a common language, share borders, of course, by definition, share common problems and challenges, make it easier to find common ground, to identify common problems, and then to share experiences across regions. So that's also something that I think is important. And second to last, I think it should also be done in a very incremental and inclusive way. So incremental means that I don't think a lot of countries of the global south right now have the means or the time or the bandwidth to set up an organization like DFID or like the USAID. Or I think it should be done by supporting what is being done, by supporting regional networks, by supporting projects that exist, by working on changing the culture of the different stakeholders that are involved in cooperation projects, and inclusive by adding civil society in the loop, by really trying to answer needs that come up from these different populations. So it's not about setting up national, or not only, I would say, about setting up national cooperation agencies. The role of these national cooperation agencies should be a little bit like the role of national statistical offices in national statistical systems, which is to catalyze, to support, to make sure that there are standards and norms, but also changing the culture, I would say, first and foremost. And last is about, of course, the question of measurement and data. And there, I believe in data. I believe in the value of measurement. I believe in the value of learning through quantifying the world, and so there's a lot of things that can be done to improve effectiveness at all the different stages of a project. In the identification of a project, you can think of doing natural language processing or sentiment analysis of what is it that people want in your own country, but also like in the region. You can use technology to crowdsource, to do surveys, and so on and so forth, and then you can put in place monitoring systems that such that you can keep track of expenditures, such that you can ensure that there is no or less corruption along the value chain of projects. And then in the evaluation of projects, you can set up kind of like A/B testing or randomized control trial. There are lots of things that data and technology can help do to improve the kind of the effectiveness. But my point, and I was close here, is that I don't think we should jump right away to the question of how do we measure effectiveness. I think first we should focus on what is the meaning of all this, and really last focus on cultural issues. I think these are very cultural issues. It's the culture of cooperation. It's a culture of learning. It's a culture of accountability. It's a culture of transparency. And these are some of the objectives that like South-South cooperation should aim to achieve. Thank you.
Thank you, Emmanuel, for this very interesting and very provocative presentation. Also, I want to salute the fine use of language that you just displayed here around the different meanings of the word meaning. You spoke about intentions and you spoke about instruments. So it's an important invitation that you do about not to jump too quickly into measure, but actually to ask the question of what we mean by South-South cooperation, what we mean to achieve through South-South cooperation, and then you inject some conversation about the values of this set of ideas, maybe Western ideas, around the value of official development assistance and the value of freedom and freedom of expression and democracy, etc. And also you talk about the means to achieve the measurement or to achieve the project, which is then an invitation for strengthening multi-stakeholder work, for strengthening also working in concrete problems through projects, which is happily what we at agencies of international cooperation do, and also this connects a bit with what Mr. John Hardy was mentioning around the structure around projects and working with partners and working to develop partners and foster partners. So this is a great set of interventions from all of our panelists. I want to open the floor now for questions or maybe feedback or conversation that we might have about these interventions around people from the audience. So please go ahead, anyone who has a question or has something to add to this discussion before we move to the next part of the meeting. I want to maybe share a bit and put a question here in the chat to make sure that we are all on the same page, so to speak. So I'm putting in the chat a question that is in the concept note and that was behind some of the invitation that we presented to our partners, which is this one. What aspects of South-South cooperation must be measured to make it more effective, even if some may consider it controversial? And happily, also, this issue of controversy around the definition of South-South cooperation has arisen right now in the panel. For example, we mentioned that some countries in the Global South include peacekeeping missions, for example, or contributions to multilateral organisms as part of South-South cooperation. We in Colombia don't adhere to any of those 2 points of view, but we understand that is the definition of South-South cooperation is to a certain extent up to each one of the players. So since we are here asking uncomfortable questions and daring to ask them, we present this opportunity to you also. What do you think we should be measuring in South-South cooperation? Paulo mentioned in his intervention maybe the opportunity costs or the administrative costs of doing climate mitigation, as understanding that this has a planet-wide positive effect. So, and we see, for example, that international cooperation agencies from the northern countries usually take into account overhead costs and administrative costs of the donations and the grants they provide as part of their contribution. So this would mean if you are symmetrical or democratic or some way around those ideas, this could also take a space in South-South cooperation. So we pose this question to you and we invite you to ask or to answer via the chat or via opening your microphone and participating here. So please go ahead.
Hello, Luis. Can I say the answer?
Yes, please, Falguni. Go ahead.
Yeah, actually, you senior already done. We are junior and we are too little from you. So we have to work like a friend in need, a friend in need, simply. Means nowadays, I seen many countries are giving different statistics, different publication. But the thing, whole world, we have to be work like one family. If we will work like one family, then easily we will achieve SDG 2030 also, and many things we will achieve. So we have to work like one family and a friend in need, a friend in need.
Thanks, Falguni. So you present here this idea of, you present it as being one family, but it can also be interpreted as working in coordination with a similar objective or with similar means. So working around projects, we're discussing around this idea. I see Loara Lopez participating in the chat, mentioning that the idea of mutual benefits may be the most difficult one to deal with, and yet it is a key aspect of South-South cooperation. I see somebody raising his hand. Maybe Artemi, was it?
I was not, but I was about to. Thank you, Luis. But well, you know, I think that based on what Emmanuel was saying, I think that the most important is really this idea of the meaning. And the response to your question in this sense is that I think for each country it can be different. And whatever is meaningful to measure is important to measure. Because some country may feel sort of empowered to, you know, to make the change to some, you know, big loans that it receives from the major Southern partners, and some don't. Some partners, some countries do feel that measuring the contribution to the global public goods, as Paolo highlighted, is something that really helps them in the negotiation process on climate and on other things. And some simply don't feel that this is possible. Based on this, by the way, I have a question to Catalina, if possible, to elaborate what are the main differences between the SEGIP methodology and the methodology that you adopted, and what's the meaning of these differences, sort of where you decided not to go with the consensus and to go with your own specific points.
Okay, thanks, Artemi. Thanks a lot for your inputs. We are, just to make clear, we are part of the SEGIP and we provide information for the SEGIP. But the SEGIP information is maybe basic data that we send in order to have the same information for this type of report. So as I was mentioning, is for instance, the type of partner, the role that we have, the budget that we use for the project, and some of these key aspects. What we are proposing is to have a complementary idea to monitor the South-South cooperation. So besides this information, that is a basic information, with our model, we try to have qualitative information that gives information about the value added of our cooperation. So these are qualitative indicators that provides information regarding if we improve the knowledge during the exchange, if we under the project involve minority groups or beneficiaries, or if we create new procedures or create new relations or networks. But it's not to be aside from the SEGIP. We are part of the SEGIP and we provide information, and we believe it's a very successful report because all the Ibero-American countries are providing information for that. So it's very, very useful, and we agree with that scope. But besides that, we also provide complementary information on a qualitative basis.
Great. And also, I want to also highlight the new use of the word meaning that Artemi presented here, which is as an adjective. So he spoke about meaningful. What's meaningful to do is what's meaningful to measure. So again, thank you for that. I see Lina has raised her hand. So Lina, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. I just want to make some kind of reminder, listening to Catalina and Paulo and Emmanuel. I think that maybe we can make it now. There are aspects to value rather than to measure. I agree with that. to make it more effective, of course. South-South cooperation is not only between governments. Much of the South-South cooperation is immersed in the work of CSOs, but it is neither valued nor considered. Much of the SSC is organized by the governments, but the experiences that are shared are in some cases of the knowledge and knowledge built, implemented, tested, and innovated by non-profit entities. So it is pertinent that the SSC recognize and value the contributions of the SSC networks and platforms. In addition, the SSC should measure how well the principles of the effectiveness of cooperation and other commitments, such as generating enabling environments for CSOs, are fulfilled. Consider the role that the same effectiveness agenda gives CSOs as development actors on right. We are very interested in drawing attention to the need to ensure that the SSC actually manages and carries out actions without harm, as any ODA scenario must guarantee. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lina, for this interesting participation that you do to call it into our attention that maybe the agendas of the civil society organizations also carry with them different colors and different necessities or needs to address via the effectiveness agency. So you effectively argue for enabling environments, you argue for the role of CSOs as development actors, and also drawing into our attention into working with action without harm, which is one of the principles that's behind the effectiveness agenda, and making sure that it responds to the needs of the recipient or the beneficiary, even though in South-South cooperation we usually don't use this kind of language to refer to our partners, yet it is very clear that it's important. I want to give the floor now to Luara Lopez, and after that we will move ahead to another a bit of a survey that we want to present to you to understand where we can start getting information to promote this debate. So Luara, please go ahead.
Thank you, Luis. Thank you. It's a really quick note. It's for some coincidence. Right now, it's also happening the presentation of the Brazilian report, the COBRADE report. And I'm not attending both events at the same time, but I'm hearing some things that are going on in the YouTube thing. And funny enough, they are talking about adopting the TOSD methodology for the Brazilian report. And this is happening without much debate with, well, anyone, I guess. So I was just thinking that maybe as a suggestion for the group, it would be good, since we lack kind of a political space, since the GPDEC innuendo of, the big countries living extravaganza thing, we lack that kind of political space for dialogue, I think. So maybe the group could produce some inputs that would foster this kind of dialogue. I think this is kind of urgent, actually. Thank you.
Thank you, Lara, for these ideas. We will take them into account. So I will then now share a couple of slides from our presentation, and part of the invitation will be for you to go into a web page and do a bit of ideation exercise to gather some information also. So can you confirm that you are seeing this, please?
Yes, we are.
Great. So thank you, Paulo, for confirming. So as the documentation that we sent to you talks about, the community of practice on measurement and quantification of South-South cooperation will have two main work stream, documentation work stream, in which we will do kind of meta-analysis of reports and best practices that we can find around the world. And the idea is that the insights that we get from reading this or finding these common patterns or problems will be used to structure discussions and exploratory works in the community work stream, which is the second one. And that community work stream will be organized with frequent discussions and eventual meetings, fora, and peer sessions. And now, this event is part of the approach that we are taking to this community of practice is that since we have been participating in different spaces, which for over years have developed consensus around these ideas, the debate maybe needs a new, if we want to make new dishes, we probably need new ingredients. And these new ingredients is we are taking into account the multi-stakeholder approach of the GPEDC and this action dialogue. And that's why we are bringing the private sector, academic institutions, civil society organizations, in order to fulfill our hope and our wish that we can find new solutions while talking to different partners. So since we aim to push the knowledge frontier forward and we don't want to retread ground and maybe do redundant work that has already been done and maybe to a better level of expertise, we want to call on these network of actors. And the invitation now is for you to go into menti.com, www.menti.com, and enter code, sorry, I came out of, and enter code 67567275. I will try to copy this code into the chat. Give me a second here. So it's menti.com and you enter code, this 8-number code. And I'm going to move right now to the other screen. So the question, if you can see it, please confirm that you are seeing the question over Menti. It is this one. Which documents are mandatory literature for understanding how South-South cooperation or technical exchanges are measured? We want to take advantage of your knowledge and identify which are the best ideas or the best first steps for this. So please mention as many documents as you can. For example, Luara just mentioned the report that is being announced right now or showed or developed here right now in Brazil. That would be a very good idea for us to use. Excellent. I'm seeing now 5 responses here. Let's give maybe a few more seconds for more partners to do. This would be like the required reading of a syllabus of the for a course on measuring South-South cooperation. We want to start from this, and this will be the first materials that we review for our lead review. I see 10 responses already, so thank you for that. Let's give a couple of seconds, and we move to the second question that we have prepared. And the second question is not about documentation, but about initiatives or networks that we should work with or complement so that we don't retread ground. This goes back to also a lot of points that Catalina and John and Paulo and Emmanuel made about working with partners in doing this. So please give us your knowledge. Exactly, South-South Galaxy from the UNOSSC and help us start making partnerships with partners around the world. Let's give maybe a couple of minutes. Let's see PIPS, we see the GPSDD, the GPI of Triangular Cooperation, LES, LATAM. Exactly. So the first question had 10 answers. We now have 10 answers on this second question. All right, so I think we can stop now. I want to thank you again for all these great ideas. And I'm going to share one more thing, and we are going to finish probably with a couple of minutes. Does anybody have a question, a comment that they want to post right now before we close the session? This would be a good time.
Just one quick question, Luis,
Yes, Paulo.
because I don't think I think the system did not collected my answer for the first question, but I have to mention the guide for South-South for the quantification of South-South cooperation produced by Articulação Sul. They have a guide for that, and we should mention that.
Great.
It's a very in-depth study.
No, that's awesome. And well, it's now recorded here, so we are going to take that. I see Laura was involved in some place, or she's familiar with the document because she agrees forcefully with you on that recommendation. And I will just now present a small slide here, which is the next steps that we're going to have. And it's this, we have your contacts because you're registered to the event. Participants will be contacted soon to set up a profile at the community of practice and start building with us. We will go ahead and go through the recommendations of documents and networks and start developing a plan to articulate with them and do as much as we can to not retread ground and push the knowledge frontier forward. From this point on, both our discussions and our events will be conducted in English and Spanish. I want to again thank for our Latin American partners for their patience in participating in this event in English. And one of the first tasks that we have here at the Community of Practice agenda will be to agree on a short name that isn't seemingly random combination of letters. So right now we have COP MQSSC. Hopefully we can all come up with names that are more attractive than this. I want to thank you again for your participation, and I want to congratulate you on this and wish you a very good Tuesday or a very good night, and hopefully we will look at each other and speak again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you so much.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Luis.
very much.
Bye-bye.